On a Tuesday morning in March of last year, my daughter set down her phone, looked at me over the rim of her travel mug, and said, "Mama, Corbin and I have been talking, and we think it's time you started looking at somewhere with a little more support, somewhere safer for a woman your age." She said it the way you'd mention the weather. I didn't cry. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't reach across the table for her hand the way the old me would have. I just took another sip of the coffee I've made the same way since 1979, set the cup down on the ring it has worn into that table over 40 years, and said, "All right, let me give it some thought." What she didn't know was that I'd already started thinking, and by the time I was finished, my daughter and her husband were going to find out that the woman they'd decided to move out of the way still had a few decisions left in her. My name is Ramona Faulkner. I'm 68 years old, and I want to tell you what happened, start to finish, because somewhere out there is another woman sitting at her own kitchen table, in a house she built with her own hands, being told in a kind voice that she's become a problem to be solved. If you're listening from somewhere far from Asheville, North Carolina, go on and drop your town in the comments. I like knowing how far a story can travel, and stay with me to the end, because I promise you the part you think you know is not how this goes. Let me back up to that Tuesday, March 5th, a little after 7 in the morning. The light was coming in through the window over the sink, the one Ellis cut into the wall himself the spring before he passed, because I'd told him once that I wanted to be able to see the dogwood when I did the dishes. I had his old flannel shirt on over my nightgown, 3 years gone, and it still smelled like him underneath the laundry soap, sawdust and Old Spice, and something warm I never could put a word to. I was standing at the stove stirring grits, and I heard my daughter come down the hall in her socks. Sloane is 41 now. She had on the kind of athletic clothes that cost more than my first car, all of it the same shade of dusty pink, and she went straight to the sink and started rinsing a glass that was already clean. I've raised that girl. I know her tells. When my own daughter can't look me in the eye while she scrubs a glass that doesn't need it, I know something's coming down the pipe. Her husband came down a minute later, dressed for the office, phone already in his hand. Corbin is the kind of man who shakes your hand a beat too long and calls everybody boss. He'd talked his way into a position at a commercial real estate outfit downtown, and to hear him tell it, he was always one big closing away from never having to work again. He poured himself coffee out of the machine he'd installed on my counter, not my percolator, his pod thing that beeps, and sat down across from me and turned his phone face down. That's how I knew it was rehearsed. Corbin doesn't put his phone down for anybody. "Ramona," he said. He's never once called me Mom, and that morning I was glad of it. "We wanted to talk to you about the house. It's a lot of house," Sloane said from the sink, still not turning around. "The stairs, the yard, the roof's going to need redoing in a few years, and with Daddy gone." 3 years, I said. "Your daddy's been gone 3 years, baby." "I know how long it's been." Her voice caught, just a little, and for a second I thought maybe this was something else. Then she steadied herself and kept going. "I'm just saying, it's a lot for one person to keep up with. There are beautiful places now, Mama, communities. They have activities, a nurse on call, somebody to handle the cooking and the cleaning. You'd have so much more freedom." Freedom. She said it like she was handing me a present. Corbin leaned in. "There's a place out toward Hendersonville. Gorgeous campus. We could get you a deposit down before the spring wait list fills up." He paused, and here it came, the real reason, dressed up in a nice suit like everything he says. And honestly, Ramona, the equity in this house could do a lot of good right now. My firm's restructuring. Sloane's been wanting to open the boutique. If we could borrow against the place, or sell it and put you somewhere comfortable, everybody comes out ahead. There it was, the whole thing laid out plain. Sell my house, pocket my life, and store me somewhere with a craft hour and a nurse, all so my daughter could finally open the little shop she'd been dreaming about, and my son-in-law could plug whatever hole his restructuring had blown in their finances. I want you to understand something. This was not a house to me. Ellis and I poured the footings for this place in the fall of 1978. We were 23 and 25 and didn't have the sense to know we couldn't do it. We borrowed his uncle's truck. We got cheap lumber off a man going out of business, and we framed those walls ourselves on weekends for the better part of 2 years. There's a corner of the front porch where Ellis carved our initials into the post before we set it. There's a door frame in the hall with a row of pencil marks climbing up it, every one of them dated, Sloane's whole childhood ladder stepping toward the top, and then a few years where I started marking my granddaughter the same way. This house has my mother's pie safe in it. It has the dent in the kitchen wall where Ellis missed the nail and put the hammer through the plaster, laughing too hard to fix it right. You don't move out of that, you're buried out of that. But I didn't say any of it. I'd learned by then that the things you say out loud are the things people learn to work around, so I just nodded slow and said, "Let me think on it." And Sloane's shoulders came down about an inch, relieved, and Corbin said, "That's all we ask," and picked his phone back up like the meeting had adjourned. They left for work. I stood in my kitchen, and I let myself feel it for exactly the length of 1 cup of coffee. The hurt of it. My own girl. I'd worked the front desk at a dental office for 26 years so she could have braces and band camp and the down payment on her first apartment. Ellis and I had co-signed her car. When her first marriage fell apart, we let her move back in. Her and a moving truck of furniture and a whole lot of crying. And we never once made her feel like a burden. And here she was, 3 years after we buried her daddy, sitting in the house he built, calling me the burden. I let myself feel it, and then I rinsed my own cup, dried it, and put it away, and I went and found the folder Ellis had kept in the bottom drawer of his desk. The deed. The title. Both our names, then just mine, free and clear. We'd burned the mortgage in a coffee can in the backyard in 2003 and toasted it with cheap champagne. That afternoon I made 2 phone calls. The first was to a lawyer. I'd met Genevieve Royce years back at church, a slim woman about my age with reading glasses on a beaded chain and a handshake like a vice. She'd retired from a big firm in Charlotte and hung out a small shingle, doing estates and elder law for folks around here. I called her office and her assistant put me through, and I told her plain what had happened at my breakfast table. She was quiet a second, then she asked me one question. "Ramona, has anybody had you sign anything lately? A power of attorney? A line of credit? Anything that needed your signature where they handled the paperwork?" I thought about it, and my stomach went cold. Back around Christmas, Corbin had brought me a stack of tax things to sign. Sitting at my own table, flipping pages and pointing at lines. "Just initial here, Ramona, this one too's almost done." I'd signed because that's what you do when family hands you a pen and a smile. "Come into my office tomorrow morning," Genevieve said. "Bring every piece of paper you've got. And Ramona, don't sign one more thing for anybody." The second call I made was to a realtor named Marlene Boyd, not one of the slick ones whose face is on the bus benches. Marlene used to bring her mother into the dental office. I'd known her 20 years. I told her I might be selling, and that I needed it kept absolutely quiet, and that I needed to understand my options before my daughter and son-in-law understood anything at all. She didn't ask why, she just said, "Tell me when you want me to come by, and I'll come in my own car, no sign in the yard. I want to be honest about something. Going behind your child's back doesn't feel like victory, it feels like grief. That night I sat in Ellis's chair in the dark, and I cried in a way I hadn't since the funeral, because some part of me kept waiting for the version of my daughter who used to climb into my lap during thunderstorms. And I had to make peace with the fact that the woman rinsing that clean glass was somebody else now. I went to Genevieve's office the next morning with a grocery bag full of paper. She read for a long time, her face very still. Then she set down the Christmas stack and tapped it with one finger. "This," she said, "is a home equity line of credit application. Your son-in-law's name is on it as an authorized party. They opened a HELOC against this house in January. 40,000 drawn already." She looked up at me over her glasses. "And this one is a durable power of attorney. You signed away the authority for your daughter to act on your behalf in financial and real estate matters. Did anybody explain that to you?" I felt the floor tilt. "They told me it was taxes." "It wasn't taxes." She took her glasses off and rubbed the bridge of her nose, and when she put them back on her voice had gone flat and certain, the voice of somebody who has seen this exact thing 100 times. "Ramona, I'm not going to lie to you. This is more common than you'd believe. And I can fix most of it, but we have to move, and we have to move quietly. We revoke that power of attorney today. I'll have it notarized and recorded before noon. We freeze that line of credit, and if you're serious about selling, we do it before they realize the ground has shifted under them. Because right now they think they're holding the deed. They're not, you are. You never stopped. I'll tell you the moment I stopped grieving and started deciding. It was sitting in that office, watching that woman line my own papers up in a row and show me, page by page, that the people I'd given my whole life to had been quietly drawing my life out of the walls of my own house. $40,000 against the place Ellis built, while telling me, with love, that I was the one who couldn't manage things anymore. I signed the revocation. Genevieve recorded it that afternoon. She called the bank and put a hold on the line of credit and started the paperwork to address the 40,000. And then she said, the thing that became my map for the next month. "Don't change a thing in that house," she told me. "Don't act different. Make their coffee. Keep planning. Smile at the dinner table. Because the longer they think they're winning, the more room you have to work." So that's what I did. And I'm not proud of how good I got at it. For 3 weeks I was the easiest woman alive. When Sloane left brochures for the place in Hendersonville on my counter, I said they looked lovely. When Corbin asked, all casual, whether I'd thought any more about the timeline, I said I just needed a little while to get my head around it, this being my home and all. And he nodded like he was being so patient with me. I made pot roast. I watched my granddaughter on Saturdays. I let them believe the house was as good as theirs. And in the mornings, after they left for work, I let Marlene in the side door. She walked through every room with me, a tablet in her hand, and she didn't talk about open concept or marble. She ran her hand along the banister Ellis had sanded smooth and said, "They don't make wood like this anymore." She stood at the kitchen window looking out at the dogwood and asked when he'd planted it. 1981, I told her, the year Sloane was born. She wrote that down, and I asked her why a thing like that mattered to a sale, and she said, "Because I'm not selling square footage, Ramona." I'm selling 45 years of somebody loving a place. The right buyer can feel that. The wrong one can't, and those are the ones we say no to. She priced it at 420,000. Conservative, she said, but it'd move quick, and she'd only bring people through that she'd vetted herself. No lockbox, no sign, just 3 showings lined up like a private audition. The first came on a Saturday afternoon, while Sloane and Corbin had taken my granddaughter to a birthday party across town. A young couple, late 30s, the husband on his phone the whole walk up the path. The wife had a look I recognized right off. She wasn't seeing a home, she was seeing a spreadsheet. She stood in my kitchen and said, loud enough that I was clearly meant to hear, "We'd gut all of this. Take that wall out, blow it open, vinyl plank through the hole downstairs. The old floor's photograph, dated. That's heart pine," I said. "My husband and I laid it ourselves." "Right," she said, not even slowing down. "That's the problem." After they pulled out of the drive, Marlene drew a single firm line through their names. "Not them," I said, and she said, "Wasn't even a question." The second was a developer, the following Tuesday morning, and he didn't pretend to care about the inside at all. He walked the back property line, counting on his fingers. "A lot like this close to downtown," he said. "You tear the house down, you could get 3 skinny modern builds on it. Maybe 4. The market up here is on fire." He looked at the dogwood like it was in his way. "I'd start at 380, cash. You'd be doing yourself a favor, taking it before the taxes eat you alive." "I've done the math," I told him. "The answer's no. I haven't even made you an offer." "You won't need to." Marlene walked him to his car, came back shaking her head, and told me she'd brought him on purpose. "So you'd see the alternative," she said, "so you'd know exactly what you were saying no to." The third showing was a Thursday, the last week of March, 3 o'clock. A couple pulled up in a Honda with some years on it. He came around and opened her door, and she took his arm going up the path because the gravel was loose. Hollis and Maren Ford. He was in his late 60s, wore the kind of comfortable shoes a man wears when he's stopped, pretending his feet don't hurt. She had silver hair and the warmest hands I think I've ever shaken. They didn't pull out a phone once. They went slow. Maren stopped at the doorframe in the hall, the one with the pencil marks, and she didn't say anything, just touched it lightly, reading the dates with her fingertips. Hollis stood at the kitchen window a long time. "That's a dogwood," he said. "My husband planted it the year our daughter was born." He smiled without turning around. "Bet it's something in spring." "It is." Maren ran her hand along the banister the same way Marlene had, and then she turned to me and asked the question the other two never thought to. "Mrs. Faulkner, why are you selling? You don't have to tell me. I'd just like to know." I could have given her a reason off the rack, downsizing, my knees, something that didn't cut, but there was something in her face, no judgment in it, only a kind of patience, and so I told her the truth. "Because it's mine," I said, "and I'd like it to belong to somebody who understands what that means." She and Hollis looked at each other, one of those long silent conversations married people have after enough years. Then she said, soft, "We lost our place in 2009. The bank took it. Took us better than 10 years to claw our way back to where we could buy again. So I promise you, we're not here to gut anything or flip anything or count how many we could fit on the lot." She looked around my kitchen like it was already precious to her. "We just want a home that already knows how to be one." After they left, Marlene sat down at my table and said, "They'd like to make an offer, full asking. They can close in 3 weeks." I looked out at the dogwood, just starting to bud. "Let me sleep on it," I said. And that night, Sitting in Ellis's chair, I listened to the house tick and settle around me. Every old sound I'd memorized over a lifetime, and somewhere around 4 in the morning, I understood that I wasn't selling my memories. I was getting them out of the hands of people who'd already proved they'd spend them. I called Marlene at 6 and told her to accept. Genevieve handled the rest with a precision that I found frankly beautiful. The Fords were paying cash. The $40,000 from the HELOC came off the top at closing, paid back in full, so the bank was made whole, and the debt my son-in-law had quietly hung on my house came right back off it. The remaining proceeds, a little over $370,000, went into a new account in a trust Genevieve set up with my name on it and nobody else's. And here's the part I'd thought about most. I'd already gone and bought myself a little brick cottage on the other side of the river, 1 floor, no stairs to fall down, a fenced yard the size of a postage stamp, just big enough for tomatoes and collards and a couple of chairs. I closed on it the same week. I didn't ask anybody's permission, and I didn't tell a soul. The day before the Ford's closing, I sat my daughter and her husband down at the table where all of this had started. I made the coffee, I want you to know that. I made it the way I always have, and I poured them each a cup, and I waited until they were settled. And then I slid a single sheet of paper across the table to Corbin, a copy of the closing statement. He read it twice before it landed. I watched it land. His face went through about 4 different things and settled on a kind of grey. "What is this?" he said. Not even a question. His voice had no air in it. "That's the sale of my house," I said. "Closes tomorrow morning at 10. The $40,000 you borrowed against it, that's been paid back, so you don't need to worry yourselves over that anymore. And that power of attorney you had me sign at Christmas, the one about taxes, I looked at my daughter when I said it. That's been revoked. Recorded back in March, the day after the 2 of you told me it was time I moved out." Slane's mouth opened and nothing came. Then she found something. "Mama, you can't just... we were going to." "You were going to," I said. "That's just it, baby. You were going to." Nobody ever once asked me what I was going to do. I kept my voice level, because Genevieve had told me the calm is the whole thing. The calm is what they can't argue with. "You sat in your daddy's house and decided my life was an asset on your balance sheet. You borrowed against the walls he built, and you came to me with your kind voices and your brochures, and you told me it was for my own good." I took a breath. "I've made other arrangements. I close on a little place across the river on Friday. I'll be moved by the end of the month. You won't have to worry about me being a lot to keep up with ever again." Corbin started in about the firm, about how the money was tied up in things, about how I'd embarrassed them, and I let him talk himself out, and when he was done, I said the only thing I had left to say to him. "You've got a job, a wife, and a healthy daughter, and you tried to take an old woman's house out from under her with a pen and a smile. I imagine you'll land on your feet. You always do." Sloane didn't say anything else that day. She cried, but she didn't say anything, and I didn't reach across the table to fix it, and that was the hardest single thing I have ever made myself not do. I'll tell you what I expected after that. I expected to lose her. I'd made my peace with it sitting in Ellis's chair, told myself a clean break was the price, and I'd pay it and build a life on the other side of it. That's not quite how it went. The Fords closed on the house, and they have been, I swear to you, the best thing that ever happened to that place. Marin sends me a photograph of the dogwood every spring. They invited me to come by any time I want, and I haven't gone yet, but I keep the picture on my refrigerator. They told me the carved initials on the porch post weren't going anywhere. Some people you hand a thing to and you can rest because you know they'll keep it. I moved into my cottage the last week of April. It's a third the size of the house I left, and I have never in my life had more room. I put my mother's pie safe in the corner. I put Ellis's flannel in the closet, where I can smell it when I need to. I planted tomatoes that first week, and collards, and a row of zinnias along the fence, because they were his favourite, loud and unfussy, exactly the kind of flower a practical man secretly loved. And the money, that's the part I want you to hear, because I know the comments on these stories. Somebody always says, put your money where they can't touch it. Well, I did. Genevieve and I set up a trust, and most of what was left after I bought the cottage went into it, and the beneficiary isn't my daughter, and it sure isn't my son-in-law. It's my granddaughter, Della. She's 9. It's locked up tight until she's 25. In an account no adult in this family can borrow against, draw down, or touch. And I wrote her a letter to be opened the day she turns 18. I won't read you the whole thing, but the end of it says this: people will mistake your kindness for weakness your whole life, baby. Especially if you're a woman, especially if you love hard. Let them be wrong. Keep your own name on your own things. And remember that the woman who raised your mama wasn't weak a day in her life. She was just patient. There's a difference. And it took me 68 years to learn it. I taped my cornbread recipe to the back, the real one, with the bacon grease, and I told her that's the actual inheritance. It took my daughter about 6 weeks to come to me. She showed up on a Sunday, no Corbin, just her, standing on my little porch with her hands twisting in front of her, and she didn't have a speech. She just said, "Mama, I think I lost the thread of who I was supposed to be, somewhere, and I let him do most of my thinking, and I am so ashamed I could die." And then she did the thing she used to do during thunderstorms. She put her face down on my shoulder, and I let her, because I am her mother, and that doesn't quit just because she forgot it for a while. We're not where we were. I won't pretend it. There are things that got broken that we're still finding pieces of. But she comes by on Sundays now, sometimes with Della, and we sit on the porch and shell beans and say not much of anything, and it's honest, which is more than it was for a long time. As for Corbin, that's between him and Sloane and whatever they decide to be. I'm not in it. I sold being in it, right along with the house. Last Sunday Della was out in my postage stamp yard, chasing a lightning bug at dusk, and Sloane was next to me on the porch, with a glass of sweet tea, and the zinnias were coming up loud and crooked along the fence. And I thought about that breakfast table over a year ago, my own girl telling me in her kindest voice that it was time I got out of the way. I spent 45 years building a house with a man I loved. I spent another 20 filling it with people who somewhere along the line forgot I was the foundation and started treating me like a wall they could borrow against. And now, at 68, I'm building something I should have built a long time ago. A life that has my name on it and nobody else's, that nobody can take a pen to, that I do not have to ask one single soul's permission to go on living. The dogwood still blooms every spring at the old house. Maren sent me this year's picture last week. The blossoms were white and perfect and reckless, the way they always were, and underneath in her own handwriting she'd written, "Still your tree, far as we're concerned." I didn't sell my home. I sold the woman who thought she had to shrink to make room for everybody else, and I have not missed her for 1 minute. My name is Ramona Faulkner. I built a house with my own 2 hands. I nearly lost it to the people I loved most, and instead I built a porch, a garden, and a granddaughter who is going to grow up knowing exactly whose name goes on her own front door.